Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
You look great. It's fantastic to be here. So I imagine folks might know a little bit about the Secret Service, and if you only know a little bit, you may know us for our protective mission. And that's okay. That's what we get all the time. That's what the TV shows and the movies are all about. But that's not how we started. Our story goes back to April 14th of 1865. That's probably a date you might remember from middle school or high school. Legend has it that on that afternoon, President Lincoln's last official act was to authorize the creation of the Secret Service. And it really is a very, very sad irony to think about just a few hours later, he'd go to Ford's Theater and he'd be assassinated. The president's decision that day had nothing at all to do with the protection of presidents or dignitaries. But he was trying to address a different kind of threat, a threat against our country, a threat against our economy that had to do with counterfeit currency. And the Secret Service was created to combat that threat, and as such, we were a purely investigative agency for about 40 years. It wouldn't be until after another assassination, President McKinley's in 1901, that then President Teddy Roosevelt ordered the Secret Service to pick up protection of presidents and other dignitaries, vice presidents, and so on. And so for about 120 years now, we've carried out this dual or integrated mission of both protection and investigation, and we think that those experiences are symbiotic. In other words, one enhances the other, and I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit about that later on. So nowadays, we're still very much in the fight against counterfeit. It still poses a risk to our economy, but for the last 40 years or so, we've been much more heavily invested in combating complex financial fraud, and we're proud to be on point in the fight against cybercrime. On the protective side of the house, our mission mandate has grown exponentially. We have more than 40 permanent protectees. Those are U.S. persons that we protect. We also provide protection for all foreign heads of state and heads of government and their spouses when they visit here. And we serve as the lead operational agency for these events called National Special Security Events, or NSSEs. So things like the inauguration, if the Pope visits somewhere in the U.S., sometimes the Super Bowl, things like that. So we have a very diverse workforce in the Secret Service. We're very proud of that. We are relatively small. We are only 8,000 people. We like it that way. Of those 8,000 people, less than half are special agents. About 1,700 are part of our uniform division. That means they're police officers, and that is an outstanding organization. The easiest way I could explain that is the uniform division is part of the Secret Service the same way that the Marines are part of the Navy. Let's see, in addition to them, we have about 2,000 folks in the area of mission support. So whole broad swath of, if you could think of a job, we have it, and those are one of those 2,000 people. And for those who are prior service, you know it's the mission support people who make the wheels go round and round. In addition to our vast number of operations and facilities in the Washington, D.C. area, we have 160 field offices around the world. And to include one right here locally in Macon, Georgia. And I would be remiss if I did not recognize the agent in charge of our Macon, Georgia office, Scott Ginolette, who's with us here. More importantly, he is a graduate of GMC. So we're a unique organization in a lot of ways. We're law enforcement, we're a domestic law enforcement agency, but we're a little bit different than the others because of that protection piece and the intelligence and the threat management requirements that go along with it. We look and we operate a lot like the military, but you all know that we're not part of the armed forces. We don't exist within DOD. We're actually part of the Department of Homeland Security, just like the Coast Guard. We are a federal agency, so therefore we're part of a larger bureaucracy. But what's interesting about the Secret Service is that we are one of very, very few agencies in the federal system that has 0 political appointees. And that's not by accident. We are all career employees. That's because we don't subscribe to any political party, platform, ideology, or candidate. Instead, we wholly commit ourselves to the continuity of our constitutional government and by extension, the preservation of our way of life. And show of hands, who's taken an oath here? That's almost every hand. So you've effectively made a solemn promise to do the exact same thing. So that's a little bit about the organization that I'm with now and I've been with for over 27 years. Very proud of it, but that's not how it started out for me. And candidly, it's not possible for me to look out at your faces and not see myself in some ways because figuratively speaking, I sat where you are more than 30 years ago. Growing up, I wanted nothing more than to go to a service academy. That did not work out for probably the correct and the right reasons, but I'm very, very proud to have earned an Army ROTC scholarship. Proud of my service in ROTC, proud of having been commissioned and serving in the Army afterwards. But I should also be honest and tell you that I wasn't always distinguishing myself as an honor cadet as I started my career in ROTC. Back in the 80s and the 90s, the Army had a slogan more than a motto, if you will. It was for recruiting purposes. It was everywhere. It was on TV, it was on the radio, it was on buses that they drove by, it was on billboards. That slogan was, "Be all you can be." It's really powerful stuff if you stop and think about what that means. But the reality was, that advertisement was everywhere. It was, in a word, ubiquitous. You couldn't get away from it. And it sort of drowned out the meaning of what that was. Anyway, as I went through the motions of my first year or two in ROTC, I came to a realization one day that I wasn't. I wasn't being all I could be. And for reasons I'm not going to really be able to explain well or justify, somehow in my mind, I'd created a balance sheet. I determined that the Army was paying this much for my college tuition, so therefore I only owed them this much in terms of effort. Made good business sense, because I thought to myself, I'm getting up every morning at 0500 to go out in PT, and I went to a traditional college, so as I was leaving my dorm in my college house, my friends were coming back in from having a good time. I spent so many weekends on field training exercises and Ranger team events. I gave up so many spring breaks and summers to spend time at Fort Bragg and Fort Benning. So again, cold, analytical read, that makes sense. On balance, they're giving me this much, I'll give them that much. But it didn't really make sense. It was empty logic that made me feel empty inside. And so I'm really grateful to my peers that served with me at the time, who modeled the behavior they expected from others. I'm grateful to my leadership, and I'm particularly grateful to my NCOs, who were very clear that I wasn't disappointing them by not being all I could be, I was disappointing myself. So overall, very, very grateful for that experience and that epiphany, if you will. I look at that as part of growing up. And it's a funny thing growing up. You realize the older you get that there's no finish line. You never stop growing up. Actually, I found it to be more used to consider when it is when somebody starts growing up. And I would submit to you that a person starts growing up the moment they realize that they are not the central character in everybody else's story, right? And if you have any toddlers in your life, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because toddlers have no choice but to think that they're the center of the universe, because that's the reality we've created for them. So, when thinking about what it is I want to share with you today, I was reminded of an experience I had many years ago when I was in the Secret Service Academy. On this particular day, our cadre, our instructors, loaded us onto a metal craft that looked a lot like a helicopter. And once aboard, we were instructed to buckle in and then put on a pair of ski masks that had been painted black, so you could see nothing at all, no light, nothing. And before too long, we could sense that that craft was being raised way up into the air. After sitting up there for a while, not really being able to sense what was going on around us, disorientation began to set in. And we weren't really clear as to whether we were moving forward or backward or if we were spinning around. And then, whatever it was that hoisted us up in the air, let us go. And that craft came crashing down. We very quickly realized we were in water. Now, I don't know if we have any pilots here today, but when a helicopter goes into water, a number of things can happen, to include flipping over. That's exactly what happened for us that day. So the objective of the exercise was very simply to follow a series of steps as we'd been instructed in order to unbuckle ourselves, assist others, and lead them to the surface and to safety. But that was not the point of the experience. The real lesson that day was to remind us that if and when we find ourselves upside down in deep, dark water, the first and most important step is always, don't panic. You see, our instructors had intentionally created an environment, a reality, of nothing but drama, trauma, and chaos. And it was up to us to rise above all of that, quite literally, rise above it, get ourselves and others to the surface, heads above water, and once there, reach out and grab hold of each other. Because the only way that we were going to make it through that chaotic and traumatic experience was together. As young leaders, you will be expected to lead others above over and beyond all sorts of drama, trauma, and chaos in your professional lives. And that's particularly challenging because as young people, you're going to have to navigate a whole lot of drama, trauma, and chaos in your personal lives. I do realize that you've all taken different paths to arrive here at GMC. I think it's one of the greatest things about this institution. And I realize you're all going to move on to various other opportunities in life when you finish up at GMC. But there is one thing that is and will always be true about you as individuals and as a group, and that's the fact that you're actually here for the same reason. And that's to further invest in one of the most important qualities and attributes for you as a leader, as a citizen, as a partner, as a teammate, as a person who's interested in the process of growing up. That quality or attribute is no mystery to you. I would imagine it's the first thing you saw when you stepped on campus. And that's because character, above all, matters most in life. I imagine you've spoken about character quite a bit since you've arrived here at GMC, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about it. Perhaps you've heard that character is maybe most easily described as doing the right thing when nobody's watching. It's doing that same right thing when there are easier options right there in front of you. For those moving on to West Point, you probably heard that a big part of your experience is choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. It's part of the cadet creed. In driving your actions, strong character certainly needs to be more verb than it is noun. But inconveniently, we're not born with it. Character cannot be bought, it can't be taught, it can't be inherited. General Caldwell cannot issue it to you when you finish up here at GMC. It must be built, and it can only be built by you. There's no how-to manual, and your character will be cultivated as a result of your own personal journey of trial and error. So, in an effort to help you with that self-examination, I'd like to recommend that you begin viewing your actions, yourself, even your reactions, through these three separate but interrelated lenses of attitude, aptitude, and resilience. And I'd like to save attitude for last because I feel it's far and away the most important. But when I speak about aptitude, and you're familiar with that, many of you took the Scholastic Aptitude Test, I'm not really referring to your inherent talents and abilities, but rather what it is you'll do to hone and sharpen those skills in the future. Is there anybody here that doesn't think that Michael Jordan and Tom Brady have an aptitude to play basketball and football? Of course not. They might be the greatest athletes of our time. Does anybody here think they rested on that aptitude? No. If you know anything about them, they're probably also the two hardest working athletes of our time. I like to think about aptitude the same way I think about our teeth, right? Whether you believe in God or the Creator or the universe, somehow, some way you were gifted these talents and abilities, the same way you were given these teeth. But if you don't take care of your teeth, in time, you're setting yourself up for discomfort, pain, financial drain, and then they're going to fall out and you lose them altogether. The same thing is true about your aptitude. Your commitment to improving yourself is directly proportional to your work ethic. And your work ethic is a direct result of your self-discipline. A number of years ago, when I was going through that crisis of confidence, somebody very close to me shared with me the secret to increasing my own self-discipline. I'd like to share it with you now. The secret to increasing self-discipline is that there is no secret. It really is just a matter of doing a little bit more and a little bit better each day. At the end of it all, it's not the intensity that matters, it's the frequency. Well, before any of us consider our own level of resilience, I think it's important for us to examine what it is we want in life. We can go around the room and rattle off all the things that we desire. That's pretty easy. But it's really the underbelly of that desire that matters most. What motivates those desires? And most importantly, what are we willing to endure to achieve those things? I like to think about resilience as having the ability to take a punch and stay in the fight. There is a great quote that is attributable to no one, apparently. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's been around for many, many, many years. And it goes something like this. The road to mastery can only be traveled by those who can tolerate being a beginner. I'm here to tell you, you will be a beginner again and again in this life, and especially with regard to the pursuits and the vocations you're committed to. So I highly encourage you to get out there on that road as often as possible in life. But know this, somewhere early on in that path, you're going to encounter an obstacle. It's going to seem miles wide and twice as deep. It is an impediment that every single one of us who's been out on that road has bumped up against. That thing that's blocking your path, that's called the fear of failure. It will make you think twice and cause you to question your own aptitude and resilience. But know this too, the fear of failure exists only in your mind. It's not real. And what you really need to understand is that your response to that obstacle is your outcome. So for you, the only way is through, because beyond that obstacle, up ahead on that road, are things like achievement, accomplishment, growth, opportunity, maybe even something that feels a lot like happiness. Whereas all that lies behind you is regret. And finally, we move on to this last lens or gauge of attitude I've shared with you already. I think it's the most important because your attitude is the story of you, and you alone get to write it. No one else can control your attitude but you. I can tell you from personal experience, it is a very difficult thing to maintain a positive attitude when things aren't going fantastic, and it's pretty easy to develop a negative attitude. But this is also true. A positive attitude and mindset is far less burdensome to you, and it's far more contagious to others. I wish when I was figuratively sitting where you are 30 years ago, somebody would have told me this every day when I woke up. It's the fact that people will not remember how it was that you came to have some sort of unlucky break, but they will never forget how you handled it. So what I really want you to know is that your attitude in life will actually determine your level of success, very much more so than your knowledge and skills. In fact, it's your positive attitude and mindset that will afford you the ability to maximize those gifts. Make no mistake about it, character is a choice, and ultimately, it's the sum total of 1,000 everyday choices that we make, some in public and some when nobody's looking. So I offer you these 3 lenses and 3 gauges so that you can measure and assess your own experiences as you proceed on your journey. And beyond that, I would want you to know that unlike your inherent talents and abilities, you won't get to decide when, where, or how you showcase your character. It will reveal itself in many ways, and none more obviously or consistently in how we treat others. It is impossible to live a life without having difficult conversations or needing to resolve conflict. And while people may not recall specific words you say or things that you do, they will always remember how you made them feel. So just as attitude is the story of us, how we treat other people reveals so much about who we really are. Without question, and especially in light of what you are committing yourself to in life, things like strength, objectivity, good decision-making skills, critically important in your professional lives, critically important in your personal lives. But you will never regret being kind or compassionate. And I would ask you to consider the same when it comes to how other people treat you. As you go through these experiences, take special note of those people who are happy for your happiness. Because I'm here to tell you that those are the same people that are going to stand with you when things are not going great. Keep those people close because those are your people. Well, GMC, thank you again so much for the opportunity to share some thoughts. I look forward to continuing our conversation. I hope maybe I've shared something that might be useful to you in time, but I also happen to know that you've maybe been busier in your lives. So in closing, I want to challenge you to do 2 things and to start doing them right away. Start today. The first thing is very simply to be here now. Every day, do all you can to be and remain in the moment. I've had the good fortune to travel the world several times over, listened to some of the greatest speakers and speeches of our lifetime, of our generation. But I've never been more struck by something that the Dalai Lama said and taught. And it's the idea that there are only 2 days in the year on which nothing can be done. One is called yesterday, and the other one is called tomorrow. So GMC, don't get swallowed up by the past or become hyper-obsessed with the future. Be here now. And lastly, if on your journey you unexpectedly find yourself upside down in deep, dark water, just remember that first and most important step. Don't panic. Fight your way to the surface. Get your head above water, reach out and take hold of each other, and together rise above the drama, trauma, and chaos. Thanks very much.
Well, good morning, cadets. How are you? All right, thought we'd spend a little time, just kind of a fireside chat. Sure. Give us a few minutes to kind of unpack a little bit more.
Sure, yeah.
Certainly appreciate a lot of what you said. Found me taking notes over there as well, jotting some things down. If you don't mind, I kind of want to go back to maybe the beginning of how you got here. You talked about, ROTC and the Army pathway.
Yeah.
Where did Secret Service finally fit into that? I mean, was that always an objective, or?
Yes, it was. So when I was 12 years old, I was actually, our family's Roman Catholic, and I was at my confirmation, which is something that happens when kids are about 12 or 13 years old. And that was a particular day in March of 1981, and on that day there was an assassination attempt against President Reagan. And CNN, I think, was around, but there was really no cable news, and I remember coming home afterwards, and there was just a constant replay of that event. And if you've seen it, there are a number of people who are wounded in that shooting, to include President Reagan and a Secret Service agent. And it was that day that I told my dad, who was a New Jersey State Trooper, that's what I think I wanted to do. And like a lot of things in life, I don't know that I had a laser focus for the next 8 or 9 years, but it was always in the back of my mind. And after I had that sort of growing up experience in the Army, I was very much dialed in to prepare myself for a job like this.
How about that? That's very, very interesting. I remember seeing that news as well.
Yeah.
That was a big moment.
41 years ago. It's crazy, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, clearly it hasn't all been smooth sailing in leadership development, getting to where you want to go.
Yeah.
Were there any obstacles in particular that you can look back on now and say, that was a seminal moment, that was a big moment that really kind of helped propel you to where you are today?
In my career?
Sure.
Well, I'll answer that in kind of a roundabout way. I think Jabril mentioned that I've had about 10 different assignments over the course of 27 years. So that's 10 different, you do a lot of different things in the Secret Service, but 10 different permanent assignments around the country. And what I want to share with you is that of those 10, only one was my first choice. And that one first choice lasted 80 days. So in the Secret Service, in the military, in a career where you commit yourself to public service, it probably would have been easier for me if, when I was your age, I got used to the idea that this is not a lifestyle or a job or a vocation of getting your first choice. Yeah.
That's a valuable lesson. I think we've discovered that it's a phrase that I heard recently, is that so often life goes off script.
Yeah.
Doesn't go according to script. So how are you going to make the adjustment in the middle of that when things don't go exactly the way you expect them to go?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then some of those opportunities you talk about, sometimes you take them and you think, well, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
And I should mention that the one that I wanted wasn't this position either. But as Mr. Portwood said, sometimes you thank God for unanswered prayers, right? We plan and God laughs, and you probably know who John Lennon is. Remember the Beatles? He's famous for saying that life is what happens when you're making other plans. And that's certainly true of a life spent in the Secret Service. We talk about life in the Secret Service of being a career of long days and short months. If that makes any sense to you. The days drag on and the months fly by.
If you don't mind, just kind of going back to your perception of your career, what to you has been, I don't know, and what has brought the deepest satisfaction for you in what you do?
Well, in the Secret Service, whether it's on the investigative side or the protective side, we're basically about the same thing, right? We're about preventing, deterring, detecting, and mitigating or lowering risks to the extent possible. And then if there is an episode or there's an incident, dynamic response. So that's what we do on both sides of the house. How do you measure that? Well, if we leave here now and we turn on the local news, tonight, there's not going to be stories out of Atlanta about all the airplanes that landed successfully, right? That we never see that. It's always when there's an incident. So it's hard to really look at a particular moment. You just look at the suite of experience and the contributions you hope you've made and sort of ensuring the continuity of our constitutional government. It sounds heady because it is, but it really matters.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and that becomes the undercurrent.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard you say it several times,
yeah.
But that's the undercurrent of everything that you do.
Yes.
And I love how you made the parallel for our cadets here that have taken those oaths.
Same thing, yeah.
To recognize those are not just words.
Right.
That's the guiding principle,
yeah,
of protecting the Constitution.
Yeah, right,
and
absolutely.
the people of America.
Absolutely, yeah.
I do know that, and just from, not that I'm a Secret Service expert, but having done my back briefing, that there's a lot of interagency support that goes on.
Right.
And I know that, and I think our military officers here could attest to this, that especially over the years, even our military branches have become less Army only, Air Force
Absolutely.
only. There's a lot of
Thankfully.
joint tasks.
Absolutely.
So if you don't mind, just kind of share maybe some leadership lessons on how to work with diverse groups and how to kind of pull people together around a common mission.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are a small outfit. We like being small. You can't consider yourself elite and have 100,000 people in your organization. But one cost of being small is that whenever we come to your town for a protective mission, we are entirely reliant on your community, your local law enforcement, your state law enforcement, your local public safety folks, and to a great extent, the military. Quite literally, on the protective side of the house, the wheels don't roll. So that's true on the investigative side of the house, but we also make a special effort to kind of give back to communities, especially by helping educate and train local law enforcement in the areas of cyber investigation and stuff like that. To answer your question, the coolest thing about being in the Secret Service is the fact that you get to work with all these different people all across the country, all around the globe, not just fellow U.S. citizens, our foreign partners as well. I could tell you that the one thing that's going to be useful as a partner, even if you are in a nominal leadership role, and it's a word you've heard because there's #1 songs on the country charts about it, there's #1 songs on the rap charts about it. The most important ingredient is humility. You have to have a certain degree of humility when you're partner, because you're going to come in there, especially those of you who are going to serve in the military, maybe you're going to graduate from the service academy, they know who you are. You don't need to wear the t-shirt. And they're going to be more responsive to you if you go in there and you're honest and you want to broker partnerships and accomplish things together than if you go in there and you're didactic telling people what to do. That's been my experience.
And that is one of the hardest lessons sometimes to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes that transition of moving to an influential leader and out of positional authority.
Yeah.
To recognizing the necessary teamwork that has to take place to keep things moving forward.
Absolutely. If the president was going to come here right now, or if some foreign head of state was going to come here to GMC right now, the Secret Service would have arrived into town, a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, and quietly, hopefully somewhat seamlessly, working, with our partners here in Milledgeville and GBI and Georgia State Patrol and so on and so forth, and obviously GMC, to make this thing happen so it looks like it was just an easy event. And it kind of goes back to something I mentioned. When you work with partners, and a lot of you in the military will be placed in assignments where you're sent over to train some of our foreign partners. When you work with them, never underestimate that the best lesson you can afford somebody is modeling the behavior you expect from them. If you act in a way and you comport yourself in the way that you expect them to act, there's nothing you could have them read or nothing you could say to them that's going to be more effective than that.
I like that a lot. It kind of makes me think a little bit about the old golden rule.
Yes.
treat others as you
Yeah.
would like to be treated.
Right, right. Yeah, in that regard, I mean, General Caldwell can't teach you anything more than your parents or your grandparents told you in that regard, right? Just, it's how you treat others is very much who you are in a lot of ways, and it's true, and it's true regardless of what pursuits you take in life.
Right. Well, I won't deny that this is a remarkable opportunity for all of us, and we're certainly grateful for you coming to spend some time with us. But I do know that our cadets have some questions.
Oh, I hope so.
Because they're quick on their feet for that. So if we have anybody with questions, please make sure you wait for the microphone so we can capture that. But let's go ahead and take a few.
Morning, sir. My name is Cadet Horn, State Service / ECP. I major cybersecurity. My question for you today, sir, is how do you think the future of cryptocurrency will affect the national security of the United States and centralized banking systems?
It's a great question. That's a great question. Anybody here interested in crypto? You should be, because I think it's going to be around for your lifetime. So, excellent question. Here's the thing about crypto. I took I-95 to get down here. I'll take I-95 to drive home. I like to drive. I drove down from Annapolis, Maryland. Very few people could bother you when you're alone in your car. But on I-95, it was just me, and there was trucks and a whole bunch of other cars, right? Now, I don't know if in those other cars people were transporting drugs, or if anybody was involved in human trafficking, or if they just committed a crime and they used an on-ramp onto 95 to use an off-ramp to get off. I don't know if they did or they didn't, right? But there are certain regulations and rules in place, speed limits, right? You see troopers out there patrolling. There's a communication network amongst law enforcement. So that's how our highway systems work. That's exactly how cryptocurrency works too. And there's a risk in indicting cryptocurrency broadly because the vast majority of cryptocurrency is not transacted illicitly. But there is an ability right now to have these things called exchangers. Maybe you've heard of, well, if you watch the Super Bowl, Crypto.com, Coinbase. Those are centralized exchanges. But that's great. But there also is an ability for what you call over-the-counter exchangers, right? You and I can just sort of be exchanging money. The risk with over-regulating in that space is that we're just going to send those exchangers to ground. And what happens now is, and I'll sit up here and speak on behalf of my partners in the FBI and everybody else who's in this space, is when an organization, public or private, usually private, falls victim to ransomware or something like business email compromise, they are falling victim and they're losing actual funds. So we'll just call them US dollars, right? The bad actors, the criminal organizations, are converting that to cryptocurrency and they're sending it out. So to answer your question, the best way we can kind of gird our loins and prepare ourselves for the future is to be mindful of it and to learn as much as we can about it. Because I'll use an example. I have a 4-year-old niece and a 79-year-old mom. If I had both of them on stage and I hand each of them an iPad, which one's going to do better? The 4-year-old, because it's intuitive, because she's growing up with it. Mr. Portman and I didn't grow up with iPads, right? Nor did my mom. You're growing up with this thing of cryptocurrency and tokenism and tokenomics and stuff like that. So I think the best thing we could do is increase our awareness of it. And also, if anybody's password is password, change it immediately. Yeah.
Other questions?
Hello.
Hi, sir.
Good morning, sir. My name is Christopher Pombo. I'm from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I'm a United States Air Force scholar here at GMC. I wanted to ask you a question about being in the moment. When we find ourselves feeling out of the moment and hyperfixating on the past or present, what are some ways that we can reel ourselves back into being in the moment?
Well, the first thing is being mindful of it. If you're mindful of it, you're on your way. The thing that I like to do, tell you the truth, and if a lot of your folks probably interested into the soft community, folks who want to go into the SEALs and Delta and stuff, you're probably aware they use a lot of breathing techniques, like box breathing. Who's familiar with box breathing? Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. That's the kind of thing that can kind of get you, it resets what they call your parasympathetic system and kind of gives you a chance to to kind of collect yourself. It's really, really easy to kind of lose yourself in the moment. You know, in this position, and really in every position I've had in the Secret Service, you could start your week or your trip, your advance, having a plan. And, you know, everybody know who Mike Tyson is? Mike Tyson, the boxer? Mm-hmm. Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And so what happens is you very quickly get pulled off this thing, and instead of becoming a planner and a visionary, you become a firefighter, and you're just putting out fires. So if you're able to kind of acknowledge that in the moment, acknowledge, hey, I'm sort of losing, my hands are coming off the steering wheel a little bit, that's the first step. And then I would recommend looking into things like breathing techniques. Great question. Sir. I'm not sure where the mic is.
I think they're figuring that out too.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Karen Jones. I'm from Maryland, and I'm ECP cadet.
You're from Maryland?
Yes,
Where?
Bethesda.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
Thank you. My question for you is, are there a lot of women that work in the Secret Service, and if they are, with like different race and everything, are they treated equally as such as the men?
Yes. There are. I'm going to answer that question in a couple different parts. So yes, we're very proud of the number of females, and like I said, we're very, very proud of our diversity in the Secret Service. You know, the fact that we have someone that have taken different paths to arrive together with us, yet in some way we're all sort of like-minded and commit to this thing, makes us that much more of a stronger organization. Now, I'll tell you, generally in law enforcement, and it's true in federal law enforcement as well, there is a disparity in terms of the number of males versus the number of females. There's been a concerted effort across federal law enforcement, and certainly within the Secret Service, to do what we can to remedy that. I will tell you that I'm proud in the last couple, we have, well, full disclosure, this isn't a recruiting visit, but it's never not a recruiting visit. And we're in the middle of a 10-year hiring push in the Secret Service to grow the agency. We're at 8,000 now, we're going to 10,000. Certainly, the best and most qualified candidate, whoever he or she is always going to be the best and most qualified candidate. However, we're very, very mindful when it comes to special officers programs and diversity. Within the last couple months, and it might have been just before Christmas, we actually graduated a class where it was more females than males for special agents, which is saying something because in my graduating class, there were 4 females altogether, and that was 27 years ago. So really trending in the right direction. You know, we could be here all day kind of philosophizing about why do we think there's less representation of females in law enforcement, not just the Secret Service. You know, there's a lot of reasons. Traditionally, it's been that way. And like I said before, life is what happens when you're making other plans. So I'll use myself as an example. I joined the Secret Service, I think I was 25, I just turned 26 as an agent. I was not married, I wasn't sure if I was gonna get married. I was actually dating the young lady who I eventually married. She wasn't sure she wanted to get married. I know she was just telling me that. But, you know, we eventually did get married. We weren't sure if we were gonna have kids. And then we actually have 4 kids now. We have 2 sets of twins. So life is what happens when you're making other plans. So I use my wife as an example. She's a lawyer by trade and training, and she wound up deciding to stay home and raise our family. So I think that speaks to a lot of the reason why there's a disparity, but I'm happy to say it's trending in the right direction. Excellent. Did I answer all your questions? Thanks.
Morning, sir. My name is Carlton McLean. I'm also from Annapolis, Maryland.
Wow.
I'm a Naval Academy scholar here. So my question for you today is, being in the Secret Service, what are some ways that you instill a motivation and purpose within a Secret Service agent themselves?
So when I became the director, which happened in a kind of very rushed way, the first question I got is, what's your vision? And I thought to myself, what does that even mean? Like, I've heard that before. Like, what do you mean, what's my vision? And so the way I came to think about it is, and you'll have to decide for yourself what a vision is. But for me, a vision is a painting that's behind us. And it's just a frame, right? And now keep looking at that frame, and you as a leader decide, what do you want to be in that frame in the next 5 years? what objects, what images, what accomplishments do you want to be reflected or represented in that frame? And so for me, a little bit of a cheat code, but the one thing that I took with me from my time as a cadet in ROTC in the Army is the idea that it is always going to be, when you are in a selfless endeavor like you all are pursuing, there's never any other way but putting the mission first and always taking care of your people. So that's the ethos I follow. That's what I preach. Matter of fact, some of the group last night I had dinner with, I gave them a coin, and in Latin it actually says mission first, people always. Why does that matter? Well, perhaps you've heard it already, and you'll certainly hear it again, and one day you'll have the epiphany, maybe sooner than I did, that it's great. I mean, first of all, you live in Annapolis and you're going to Naval Academy, that's fantastic. The fact that you all came from great things, you're going on to great things, awesome. But this is also true. What you choose to do in life is never nearly as important as why you choose to do it. And you all have your own why. And a big part of that why are the people that raised you and the examples they set. They made, the standards they established and instilled in you. And so that's what I try to communicate to our workforce, that there are easier and far more convenient jobs than being in any role in the Secret Service. Higher paying, I could promise them, those jobs they can have days off and have the weekends off. I can never promise them that in the Secret Service. So if you commit yourself to doing this thing, then you're answering your why, and that's what makes you elite, not the fact that you can do, 100 pull-ups and fall from the sky in a helicopter or whatever the story is. Ma'am? Oh, sorry. Right back to you. Sorry.
Cadet Jeffrey Pennington, an Air Force State Service from Atlanta, Georgia. My question for you is, after you did your commissioning in the Army, how did you know, I've done enough of this, it's time for me to move on?
Well, I had a very weird experience. I was a scholarship, cadet, and I was required to go active duty. I actually got orders to go to Korea and the military police, and then as I was graduating, there was this, it's a longer story, there was this move in Congress to reduce government spending, military spending. So they actually converted my commission to a reserve commission, which was bewildering when you were about to graduate in 3 months. So you had a job, now you don't. And so then I very luckily stumbled into another federal job, was down in training here in Georgia, down at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and this thing called Desert Shield broke out, and then Desert Storm broke out. So I wound up going back on active duty, if you will, kind of active guard reserve type thing for quite a long time. While I was there, it was hard to really determine, okay, when does this experience end? But maybe like you, I was very anxious to go and find whatever it was that came next. So whether it was going to be the Secret Service, some other federal agency in traditional federal law enforcement. I had a medical condition called ants in my pants, and I really wanted to, to move on to it. And looking back, it sort of makes me smile because there really was no rush, right? Because I spent that time in the military, in a prior federal job, getting myself ready, sort of exercising my demons and growing up so when I got here, I would be that much more ready to perform in this job. Yes, ma'am. Let me go here because sorry. I think I screwed up the guys at the mic. Sorry about that, guys. We'll go right back.
Okay. Good morning, sir. My name is Athena Lovett. I'm a civic leader, and I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. And my question, I have two questions. My first question is, what is the training process for becoming a special agent?
Sure, great question. So when I applied back, many years ago, 1992, I was 23 years old, and I waited 3 years to get hired. And it was really, that was a test of my character because I was ready to throw in the towel more than a few times. Our hiring process is much more streamlined nowadays. But the hiring process, unless you've lived all over the world, and our background's going to take forever, is going to be about 8 months on average. The training process is about 8 or 9 months. The first thing you do, so we'll use agent, right? You could do our gun carrying community, with sworn officers we call them. You have agents, officers, and there's some specialized folks who do a lot of technical work. I'll use agents for the example. You'll get hired, you'll go to any one of our 160 field offices. That's kind of a lie. You're not going to go to any of the overseas offices. You're going to go to New York, Miami, Atlanta, Chicago. You're going to go to usually one of the bigger offices. You'll report there. You'll do a couple weeks. Then you'll come down to our Secret Service training facility, which is right outside Bethesda, Maryland, and Beltsville, Maryland. Cool little complex there. You'll do a couple of weeks there. You'll get some exposure to firearms if you've never PT'd before, and I know you have. Some people are shocked to find out that there's PT involved in the Secret Service. And then you'll get, believe it or not, a lot of waterborne exercises. I use that example because I'm not a bio major, not bio, earth science. What is it, about 1/6 of the Earth's surface covered with water? Mm-hmm. That's why we do so much waterborne training. After that, you'll come down here to Georgia, to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which is down in Brunswick. And most federal agencies do their training there. That's, when I say a basic police academy, that's where you learn the basics of law enforcement, if you will. You do that for about 4 months. If one graduates, he or she comes back to our training facility and does another 4 or 5 months in the Secret Service Academy before they go back to their field office. It's pretty intense, but I will tell you this. I always use the example, anybody here want to be a Marine? Anybody here is a Marine? Okay, anybody go to Parris Island? All right, so it's not Parris Island, right? Secret Service School is not Parris Island, and it's not a finishing school for, the young ladies and gentlemen. It's somewhere in the middle. We hire adults because we expect them to act like adults, and to be honest with you, when you hire a 27 or 28-year-old, it's tough to do the Parris Island thing on them because our brains, as we grow up, even at your age, are doing a funny thing here in the frontal cortex, and a 28-year-old might not buy what a Marine DI is selling, whereas a 17-year-old will.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
My other question is, once you do become a special agent, what does your day-to-day plan look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So special agents in the federal system, they have a job series, okay? It's kind of like being an 01, 02, 03, 04, sort of like that. The job series in the federal system is called the GS 1811, 1811. And I'm an 1811, Scott's an 1811, of course, here in the Secret Service. If you know any FBI agents, he or she is an 1811, DEA agents, the list goes on and on and on. So in a weird way, it's kind of like having a union card, right? It's not that easy where you just jump from agency to agency. But you all go through the same level of training and certification. But the jobs themselves are more alike than they're different, but the day-to-day is different. I said before, if you're somebody like me who sort of tends to like to do a lot of different things, Secret Service might be the way to go for you because you could quite literally start your day going in there to interview a victim, a witness, a suspect. Maybe you're dressed in a golf shirt and 511s or khaki pants, whatever you call them. And then you may have to go into the locker room and suit up because, Vice President Harris is coming to town. You have to go stand post. And then once that wraps up, you've got to go help the squad because you're going out on surveillance, or you're going to put on jeans because you're going to go dumpster diving to look for evidence. I would like to tell you that I'm exaggerating to make a point, but in my time in the New York field office, those were a lot of my days. So I like the fact that you're doing a lot of different things. Some people are built differently, and some people like the idea, I just want to work this type of, case, and I want to do nothing else but my case. Well, there are agencies out there for you that do nothing but work their case. But the Secret Service, if you are inclined to do a lot of different things, this is the place to be because you do a lot of different things, whether you want to or not. I'm sorry, I screwed up your rotation. Sorry about that. Back to you.
Good morning, sir. I'm Cadet Charleston. I'm a State Service cadet, and I major in Homeland Security. My question for you today is, if you don't mind me asking, what was your first Secret Service position? And I know you said you conquered demons in the Army before, and it helped you grow. So
Yeah.
when you switched over to Secret Service, did you have any fears with the physicality of your assignments?
You say fears?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, listen, just like what you guys are pursuing, there are a lot of realities when it comes to serving in law enforcement and in public safety. So I think, the first and most important element, the first most important ingredient of the recipe is you have to want to do it and be willing to do it, despite the consequences. Your first part of the question is, where did I start? I started at a New York field office. I was about 6 years there. The first few years, I was primarily assigned to an organized fraud task force, where we did a lot of fraud back then. At the time, the kind of fraud we worked was tangential to a lot of money laundering and heroin, so a lot of that kind of work. But the second half of my time there, which was in the 90s, I served on this thing called the JTTF. Who knows about the JTTF? The Joint Terrorism Task Force. Well, a lot of people know about it nowadays. Nobody knew about it in the 90s. Got to work a lot. Now, the JTTF is housed by go back to the question about partnership, that's an FBI initiative. The FBI hosts that with the local cities. So ours was the FBI NYPD Joint Terrorism Task Force. If we drove up the road, it would be the FBI Atlanta PD Joint Terrorism Task Force. You have tons of different agencies in that group. I really appreciated that experience. Gave me exposure to a whole lot of different kinds of work. I told the cadets last night, I got to do a little bit of work back in the late 90s on a case that we used to refer to euphemistically as UBL. And it's funny because looking back, I always had the impression that people weren't giving enough attention to UBL until UBL blew up 2 embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, and then he knocked down the World Trade Center. It was Osama bin Laden. So it was great to be exposed to that type of work, but what it did for me is it actually gave me the opportunity to validate and prove my suspicions right, and that is that I was in the right place. As much as I have the greatest respect, I mean, some of my best friends in the world are FBI agents, and I love them and they love me, but I don't know that I don't want to do their job, and they'll tell you, like, we don't want to do your job. So it was great for me because it really helped us, I don't know if the word's vouchsafe, just confirm that I'm in the right place, which is a gift when you're in your late 20s to know that. I won't ask for a show of hands. I'll tell you, my dad was a state trooper in New Jersey. If you know anything about that organization, they are the real deal, and he was the real deal. He passed away last year from COVID, but he told me a couple things that I'll never forget. One, the day I graduated the Secret Service Academy, he told me 2 things. You do a lot of what we call control tactics, so a lot of hand-to-hand combat stuff in the Secret Service, and he knew that. So he pulled me aside. This is like right after graduation. Not congratulations. He said, hey, I want to tell you something. He was from North Jersey. He had a real heavy North Jersey accent. He said, I want to tell you something. The same people that can kick your butt before this job can kick your butt right now. And he was right. The second thing he told me was, Jim, on this job, some people are going to treat you like a prince, and some people are going to treat you like a porter. Now, a porter is an old-timey word, but it means like a janitor, a person who handles your bags at like a train station or an airport. His point was some people will treat you like royalty, some people will treat you like the hired help, and it's incumbent upon you to treat everybody the same way, because how you treat one person is how you treat everyone. The other thing he told me, to go back to your question, was much earlier. I was very close to your age. I wasn't sure if I was going to continue on with ROTC. I wasn't sure if I was going to continue on in my field of study or even stay at the college I was at. And I said, Dad, I just don't know what I want to do. And he said, Jim, I'm 44 years old. I have no idea what I want to do. So that's just a normal feeling you have through life. With regard to fear, the only thing I could say is we all have to make peace with it. There have been some great people who would have been great agents who quite literally graduated the Secret Service Academy, came in to work their first day, and went into the boss's office and turned in all their protective gear and weapons and said, I can't do this. So it's just whatever you're at peace with doing.
We probably have time for one more cadet question before we wrap up.
Sir, good morning, sir. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Sure.
My name is Jackson Beal. I am from Denver, Colorado, and I am a United States Coast Guard Academy scholar. My question for you today is, throughout your career, how have you worked with people who do not uphold the golden rule or who do not give you the respect that you give them?
It's a great question. So in this career, and let the one, if those are prior service, you know this, rank and title, great, you earn those, congratulations. There's probably some benefits that come along with it. There's certainly a lot of responsibilities that come with it. But more often than not, put aside rank and title, you'll find yourself, certainly as cadets as you go through training, in leadership experiences just situationally, right? And so here's what I would say to that. there's a guy named John Wooden. He was the coach of UCLA basketball. He's the winningest coach in NCAA history, won 10 championships inside of 12 years. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played for him, Bill Walton. But if you Googled him right now, that wouldn't be the first thing that showed up. It would probably be a site that says like the 101 most inspirational things that John Wooden ever said. And one of the things he said is, be more concerned with character than reputation. Because reputation is just merely what people think of you, and character is what you really are. And so your reputation is never going to be able to outrun your character, right? The character is always going to win that race. So when it comes to how you interact with your peers and even the people you work for, it is an economic decision. If you don't think I'm pulling my weight, right? If you don't think I'm doing my fair share, if you don't think I'm committed to the task the way that you are, then you're not going to buy what I'm selling. And you're not going to look to me to be part of your team. I'm not going to be on your travel squad. And that's how people sort of get relegated to the also ran. Best advice I ever got in life was the first trip I ever took in the Secret Service. I was on a plane at a Newark International Airport going somewhere to stamp, actually it might have been Denver, to go stamp post, and there was an agent, a working agent out of the Newark office who was about my age then, so he was old. And he's mountain of a man. He looked at me and he said, "You want the job?" I said, "I am." We started talking. He said, "I want to tell you the most important thing you need to know about the Secret Service. This is everything you need to know. This job is divided between the people that get it and the people that don't get it. And the people that do get it, they're going to trip, they're going to stumble, they're going to take the long way around. They may not get it at first, but they're going to eventually get it. The people that don't get it, they've never gotten it, and they never will get it." That couldn't have, I wish I could have bottled that and sold it, because that's the truest advice I've ever gotten in my life. So I think, it's really, you're making choices about investment, right? You'll make choices investment in terms of money. You also have to make choices investment in people. And now sometimes, especially, you're in the Coast Guard, so you're not going to necessarily be able to choose your shipmates, right? You're going to have to make the best of who's assigned with you. Best advice I could do is, model the behavior you expect from others and realize not everybody's going to hold themselves to the same level of performance, output, hopefully not integrity, but possibly integrity as you do.
Well, I mean, you certainly inspired me, but I'm too old to join the Secret Service.
We're hiring.
Pretty clear. I checked your website. It said 37. 37's a long time in the past. But I do know that there are probably some cadets interested in that, at least exploring that option.
Yeah.
So what's probably their best pathway if they want more information?
So, as I said, this is not a recruiting trip, but it's never not a recruiting trip. So Scott, Scott, can you raise your hand? Scott's back here. He has a whole bunch of, do we have it here before I make this offer? Yeah, he has a whole bunch of information. Anybody who's, and by the way, anybody who thinks they're going to wrap up GMC in their next school and then be out there in the workforce next couple of years, great. For those going on to service academies, fear not. As I told you, we are in the middle of a 10-year hiring push. I won't speak for Director Ray and my partners at the FBI, but they're never not hiring. So this is a field that's always going to be hiring because people retire out of it. But he has a lot of information if anybody's interested. Yeah, I highly encourage you to certainly, if you want to get into Homeland Security field, something like the intelligence community, law enforcement, and the federal system, check us out, but check everybody else out as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I know this has been a tremendous pleasure for all of us.
Thank you.
To have you here. I hope it's been much for you. So
I hope you got something out of it. Yeah.
I think I could speak for people in the room and say we certainly did. So
right.
I know our Cadet Colonel Bennett has a little presentation for you.
Okay. Great.
Just a token of ours to you.
It's not a bill for the dinner last night. Is it? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Oh, thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Thanks.
All right, let's show our appreciation to Director Murray.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I know you have somewhere to be. I just wanted to say good luck, God bless, be safe, and be all you can be, GMC. All right?
We have 10 minutes or so that we can chat down here. So, RC?